Rebel Moon has officially released on Netflix after a limited theatrical release last week, and I have not seen this much division since my 5th grade algebra classes. The majority of critics are absolutely skewering the film, while general audiences are giving it relatively positive responses, making me wonder what to make of this phenomenon. Are the critics loathing this film because Zack Snyder is secretly the devil risen from hell to lay waste to our optical nerves with slow-mo and melodrama, or are the audience happily enjoying the movie because they're a bunch of glue-sniffing Walmart shoppers who consider a big night out a trip to the Olive Garden and wouldn't know quality if it snuck into their room at night and tickled their nether realm? Now, I had to watch this film for myself to find out, which honestly wasn't that difficult because I was going to watch it anyway. Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idol, and that's right, today we're going to review Rebel Moon. Before we do, hit that subscribe button because we got over 2,000 subscribers throughout the year in 2023, and I truly appreciate you, but it's time for us to grow even more, and I could use your help doing so. You're going to get something out of it. You're going to get the greatness that is my channel, giving you nerdy news and reviews every day. If nothing else, the benefit will be when you see my perfect hair, you'll start wanting to care more about yours. Anyway, hit that button and let's get towards this review. Right out of the gate, I'm going to be honest. There's a lot of good and a lot of bad in this film. Anyone who's saying this movie is a perfect 10 or an outright 1 are lying for culture war clicks. Like most pieces of art, there's many positive aspects that are going to get overshadowed by loud people on the internet ready to build their entire personality around the also present negative facts about the film. One of those positive aspects being the cast. The only real A-list star in this flick is Anthony Hopkins, and while his role is small, you immediately know it's him, and not once do you get the impression that he's just phoning it in for that Netflix dollar bag. Many of the rest of the actors are competent B-listers who, while you may not know by name, will immediately recognize as, oh, I've seen him in insert film here. From Charlie Hunnam as the Sons of Anarchy guy, to Ed Skrein as, oh, that's Francis from Deadpool guy, to even Djimon Hounsou, assuming I pronounce his name correctly, to the Who is Star-Lord guy from Guardians of the Galaxy. While one of those issues with the film is not that every character gets enough screen time and development, we will get to that in a bit. I never once got the impression that any of these actors were playing filler characters or that their talents were altogether a waste. And look, I'm not a noob. I've been on X since the movie was released. I've seen the acting criticized as bad, bland, boring, but I don't think so. In fact, I think that's a really shallow view, and it speaks to a larger problem infesting our culture today when it comes to how dialogue works in stories. Because first of all, bad dialogue does not equate to bad acting. I mean, Star Wars prequels were maligned for their bad dialogue, but no one ever says Ewan McGregor or Sir Christopher Lee's acting was bad in those movies. The actors all did a fine job acting with what they were given, and in fact, I'm gonna make a case that even the dialogue is not that bad. Also, get used to the Star Wars references. There may be a few more of those. Anyway, back to the dialogue. Actually being better than people give it credit for, the movie does something incredibly unique that I can't say I've seen before, or at least see very often. Yeah, it's a sci-fi film, and as such, it has a very sci-fi aesthetic. The dialogue, though, it's written like a high fantasy story, so you have people with laser blasters and spaceships, but speaking in a manner you'd hear in Lord of the Rings or Dungeons and Dragons, and I think that juxtaposition is fooling people into thinking the dialogue is bad, when really, not only is it intentional, but it's interesting. Now, I want to know more about this world just because of the dialogue. Why, in a world with robots and interstellar vessels, are people speaking like R.A. Salvatore characters? Like, what is the history of this universe? What sort of culture is there? What's the political and social system like? I got all these questions just from the contrasting dialogue and visual elements. You can talk about how the movie ripped Star Wars all you want, but I genuinely struggle to think of another mainstream sci-fi film to have done this. Now, that's not to say that it's all good. Like I said earlier, this film does have some problems. For example, there's a lot of exposition dumps in the movie, like at least 3 that I can think of, and we all know the cardinal rule of film is show, don't tell. Well, technically this film does both. Like, during the exposition dumps, the movie is cutting to minutes-long flashbacks that are showing exactly what's being told. Now, could the audience have figured all this out without the narration over the flashbacks? Yeah, they easily could have. But that's the key word, easily. Which again leads me to believe this was actually an intentional choice, and the reason is pretty simple. Well, this is part 1 of a space opera. Now say it with me. Opera. And what is an opera? Well, it's a type of play. exposition like this is very common in stage plays, and the grandiose, eloquent exposition monologues are delivered in a very Shakespearean manner, so there's a lot of gravitas and weight to what's being said, just like in a tragic play. Now, was this a good way to do these scenes? That's up for debate. It does break the cardinal rule of film, like I said, but it's doing so with intention rather than incompetence, which I do think counts for something. But hey, there are more to films than just dialogue and acting. There's character, direction, set design, effects, and of course sound design. And the sound design in this film is nearly perfect. Whether it is the impact of laser beams on skin, or the sounds of ships whooshing through the air, or the quiet moments with ambient arbitrary noises in a tavern or a farmhouse, you can tell that a lot of care was put into the audio design. I just wish I could say the same about the mixing and mastering. This is another mixed bag. As much as the sounds of this film get my ear holes all hot and tingly, the Netflix version has a real problem with the volume of the score itself. I mean, the music is gorgeous. Like, don't get me wrong. I would dare say it is one of the best movie scores that I have heard all year. No exaggeration. This is one of the best film scores in a movie of 2023. But it was also as if they ported over the specs from the theatrical release one-to-one, leading to moments of no dialogue, but mood music booming through the television speakers, and it was infuriating. Not only that, is it just me, or is this becoming way too common of a problem in home releases of films lately? Because this is not the first time I've had this issue, or the first film that I've caught this being the case. Whatever this is, please fix it, Hollywood. The set and effects pretty much follow the exact same path as the sound design. The movie is an optical delicacy about 80% of the time, which, makes sense. It's Zack Snyder. Hate the man all you want. You gotta admit he has visual flair. If Stanley Kubrick was a Balvenie 21-year-old Portwood Scotch, then Zack Snyder is a flaming Sakenabe. Technically, not as impressive to those who are professionally trained critics, but incredibly appealing to the average person who has never experienced something like being served alcohol that is on fire in a restaurant. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with catering to normie sensibilities with a little bit of shallow panache. Not everyone is an online YouTube critic with a sense of self-importance because they've seen more foreign films than their gas station employee roommate. The gas station employees, they're paying customers too. What's wrong with giving the average viewer something out of the ordinary, even if it's not technically spectacular? That is to say, the practical sets on this movie, they were refreshing, if not more than adequate. The CGI hits where it needs to hit almost every time, and don't turn into a pretentious YouTube critic just because this wasn't a Kubrick film, because, it's Zack Snyder, he's the layman Spielberg, or whatever asinine excuse you're gonna give to try and justify why you don't think this film looks great, when clearly it is so visually well done. All that said, I will say, there is at least one aspect of this movie that, even as I write this review, has me so confused. There are a lot of references to Christianity and Christian iconography in the film that, so far as I can tell, don't amount to anything beyond shallow references, like names like Leviticus and Providence, or the story of a princess that can literally raise the dead, a woman who wears a cross and is said to remind a certain character of that princess, even a robot literally named JC, and while they don't call him Jesus Christ, come on, what is JC supposed to mean after all that? But it's all just there. Nothing ever comes of it. So is this just frivolous illusions and a faux attempt to be deep? Or is there something more we just haven't gotten yet? Because, let's be real, this is a setup movie. There's gonna be at least 2 more films, and you don't want to blow your load in the first film. Maybe that lack of answers is supposed to be there, to have people like me analyzing and theorizing. I don't know, but it did feel worth mentioning. Speaking of things worth mentioning, the last thing I really feel like we need to get into is the main character herself, Cora. This is how I want to see my female characters. Look, I've been the first person to criticize the strong female character nonsense that modern Hollywood has been shoving down our throats for the past decade. Women that are practically 100-pound men with all the strengths and none of the weaknesses. You don't have to call me a bleeding heart liberal for saying I loved Cora in this film. I've been calling Rey Palpatine a Mary Sue since 2015. I know what a Mary Sue is, and Cora is not that. She fails at times throughout the movie. She gets hit during fights. actually quite a lot. She makes mistakes, she does at times rely on others, and she does have a reason to be the ass-kicking woman you see in the trailer. I'm not going to explain why, because, spoilers, but her strength and skills are completely justifiable, and she's in no way perfect or infallible. So I will say it again. This is 100% what I want to see out of more female characters. I would like to see a bit more vulnerability, if I'm being honest, but again, this is only the first film, and we know there's going to be at least 3, so who knows what else we're going to see from her, but I am genuinely looking forward to it. All in all, this is not a perfect film. In fact, it's a film with a lot of flaws. For example, you have no real concept of how well the rebels are actually doing against the Imperium. They go out of their way to mention their victories have been few. But yet we see the Imperium sending their biggest, strongest battleship after them. Why? If they've only had a few victories, why send in your biggest, baddest ship? Certain characters have almost no development and even fewer lines of dialogue, but are considered part of the main crew. Again, why? What was the purpose in having them here if they're just gonna stand there for a few frames? The movie has swords that can basically turn into lightsabers at will. If they could do that, why are you bothering to use the basic sword function when they can turn into lightsabers at will? It's stuff like that, yeah, very obvious problem. Yes, there's plot holes, character development issues, and story beats that do seem to go nowhere. But I still really enjoyed this film because for all these negatives, it also did so much right. It gave us a rich, unique universe ripe for exploration, a well-crafted, mysterious, competent main character that I do want to keep following, audio and visuals that are distinctly their own despite how many tropes and ideas were borrowed from other famous sci-fi stories like Dune and the Chronicles of Riddick. Everyone is so quick to say this film rips off Star Wars, while seeming to forget that Star Wars was heavily inspired by Flash Gordon and Dune. These are the same people that are so quick to praise The Force Awakens because it felt like A New Hope and a return to classic Star Wars, while claiming this movie is bad because it feels like a dark, mature version of A New Hope and classic Star Wars. Like, which is it? What, do you want that or not? You can't have it both ways. I admire the objectively good set design, the stupendous score, the sense of curiosity about where the story is going to go. And you know what? I think the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is right. 70%? Completely fair! This movie is without a doubt a 7 out of 10, a flawed yet intriguing first entry into a new franchise that has the room to blossom into something that could last for years to come, or just crumble under the weight of its own talented yet at times pretentious director. But those are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below, or let me know on X, where you can find me at BoltTheWord. And please do subscribe. I am a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day, except for when I'm doing videos like these of a film review or something else I want to get off my chest. But let me know in the comments what you thought of the film. Have you seen it? Are you gonna see it? Do you think I got anything wrong, or is there anything more you want to add? I'd love to hear it. I read and try and respond to all comments. Also, check me out on Instagram at wordsofparadise_Leon. And remember, it's all here in the nerdosphere. This has been Words of Paradise.